Hi, everyone. Welcome to IMS Global 2020. We're so thankful that you're here with us today. We're going to be discussing the greater the influence, the greater the accountability, social good and activism within the influencer channel. I'm Lena Renzina. I run talent partnerships for the Ad Council. We are a national nonprofit in the United States focusing on different social impact issues, working with government agencies and national nonprofits like Feeding America, Meals on Wheels, Goodwill, and tackling a range of national issues that are really pressing to the public, anything from diversity and inclusion and mental health awareness and suicide prevention to wildfire prevention, seatbelt safety. And we have over 40 different campaigns that we work on. And I run all of our talent partnerships. So that's anything from big celebrities working on our campaigns and being cast in national PSAs to creator activations, music partnerships, as well as some entertainment IP integration. And I'm so thankful that today we have with us these amazing speakers who will all be talking about their own experiences at working with influencers. Not the biggest fan of that word, so I'm probably going to switch off saying content creators. But their experience working on campaigns as well as from the content creator side. So I just want to have everyone introduce themselves. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and tell us where you work and what your pronouns are and what you do.
Shall I kick off? I'm Lauren, my pronouns are she and her. I am head of brand advocacy at made.com, and my job is to get people talking about us.
I'll go next. I'm Frankie. My pronouns are she and her. I work at AWIN, the Global Affiliate Network, creating campaigns for loads of clients and executing them from start to finish.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Max. I am the creator behind, not influencer, creator behind They're Queer. I am online talking about being trans and being queer in the UK. And when I'm not doing that, I'm working with Her Social App and London Queer Fashion Show as a career queer or talking to brands about how they can better serve the LGBTQ community.
Amazing. So Lauren and Frankie, what is your current strategy for engaging creators and influencers? How do you approach working with influencers at your everyday jobs? And then Max, curious, what is your strategy for working with brands and engaging brands on your platform?
So at Made, we have a Europe-wide team working with creators of all different sizes. I guess the way that we look at everything we do, it's working with creators to reach our potential audiences. So whether that be through longer term partnerships, campaign integration, whether that's working on brand activity, social takeovers, kind of anything and everything. One thing we are kind of really focusing on at the moment is, I guess, creating a sense of community and doing and working with creators for the benefit of their community, rather than everything be so creator focused.
So for me, I think the way we approach it is to really kind of work with the brand to get a really solid brief in place. I think sometimes it can be a bit of a kind of bam, we just want to do a campaign, one off, here we go, let's get some diversity in that campaign. And it's not really kind of like, there's not any longevity there. We kind of need to have a message that aligns with the brand as well. So I think the way that we're kind of looking at working with brands is just to kind of make sure that the kind of ideals that their brands are looking to work with are part of the brand DNA already. And then that's conveyed to the influencer within the brief. There's no point just kind of tacking on activism as a kind of after point. So making sure that's really built in there.
I really love Francesca's point that like you can't tack activism on as an afterthought. I'm going to steal that. It's interesting because I think about my side of it as a creator, and I was like, it happens both ways to me. I get people approaching me, but I also approach brands that I really like or really want to work with. But I won't approach anyone that as I would say, it doesn't have their house in order. So anyone that if you Google their company name and LGBTQ, either nothing comes up or something bad comes up, which unfortunately does happen quite a lot. I think the main thing for me is authenticity. I know if a brand is coming to me specifically that they've already gone past the traditional, okay, we want to work with queer people, let's find a white cis gay man and use him. And you can also go past me and my privilege at the same time. So I think it's people are getting more and more specific about what they want to see, and they're getting more and more suspicious of the product focused influencer side of it. And I think the authenticity and diversity can be a word or it can be very well carried out, and there's a big difference between the two.
That's amazing. And I think that also is an interesting segue into balancing that brand message, but also making sure that your content has a social good or impact message to it. I know that each of our campaigns is its own little brand in a way, but at the same time, the message is only around activism and social impact. And so when trying to balance, the talking points of the campaign with the authenticity that the creator or the celebrity is trying to convey, curious to hear how you approach that with your campaigns, but also as a creator, how do you find that balance of making sure I'm getting across what the brand wants me to say, but in a way that my audience will really feel like resonates with them and is authentic?
I guess as to like the reason why people hate the word influencer in the first place is because you often see it as quite a vacuous word that is just about creating a profile to sell a load of products and make money. Whereas actually someone influential who is a credible expert in their field, they're a tastemaker, they're a real expert. That's where I think is, from a brand perspective, is way more interesting, and actually partnering with someone that stands for something, or has an interest, or is a specialist, or can actually give you some insight is way more powerful than just chasing something that like they have a pretty grid.
I really love that answer. I wrote down just the words pushback when I heard that question, because I was thinking about brands that I've worked with that have like very specific briefs. And I know all of you guys, when you're working with creators, you have to be specific because otherwise you don't get what you're looking for. But I've also worked with brands where I've gone to them and said, this is not going to resonate with my audience. This is like, for example, I had a client that I'm definitely not allowed to mention the name of, who wanted to use the word shame, and it was all like around no shame. But I was like, if you use the word shame, that's like just don't use it. It's not going to work. They didn't listen to me. I refused to work with them. It's a whole thing. I'm really not sure if I'm legally allowed to be talking about this, but I'm going to do it. But I think my main recommendation when I speak to other creators is don't be afraid to push back. And my main recommendation when I'm talking to brands is actually listen to these people. Like as Lauren was saying, they are experts in their field, so you can actually design a campaign, and the first thing you can do when you take it to a creator is actually just get their opinion on it and see if they need to change it before you roll it out. And it seems like a really obvious comment, but a lot of brands don't quite seem to get there at the moment.
Yeah, I really agree with what you've said, Max. I think that it is so important to kind of have it's like some brands really go in with like a super micromanagey brief, where you're not going to get authentic content, and it is just going to, like, you will get pushback, rightly so, from influencers and content creators. I think it's about having like the main elements of what you want to convey with the campaign, like this is what we're promoting, but then letting the talent kind of come and do interpret that in their own way. And I think that's the great thing about working with like a wide range of influencers and creators that are just really like diverse. You kind of get so many different kind of creative points that you just wouldn't get across if you're just saying, right, okay, can you go and amend this caption to read exactly this? And it just, I completely agree with what you said.
Yeah, I find that we often say a lot, we take off the creative handcuffs. So let the creators do their job and interpret your campaign within the guidelines, but in a way that makes sense for their audience. So I know that that's a lot of work that has to be done for talking to a brand or talking to other stakeholders at the organization around making sure they really understand what's going to be successful for the campaign.
In my previous role, so I don't deal with the kind of day-to-day side of the contracts now, but in my previous role at Benefit Cosmetics, it would really surprise me the amount of people that would go, okay, what copy do you want? And it's like, oh wow, I would never dream of telling anyone what copy to write. Like, I can give you, a broad brief, or you kind of know the message, but I would never dictate what anyone says, because it's so obvious when a brand has written something versus the creator.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some challenges that you're facing right now in engaging creators, or Max working with brands as a creator, both short-term and long-term challenges, and then anything that's come up this year because of COVID-19 that you've had to face and sort of pivot strategies?
I think for me, COVID has been like a massive smack in the face of like, what we're doing, and it's a huge opportunity to look at our strategy. So when we all kind of went into lockdown, we very quickly made the decision to actually pause our budget and not spend on creators, and actually we used that money to provide furniture for NHS hospitals and their staff areas, and for care homes in France, because we felt like that was the right thing to do with that kind of money. And then I guess having had a really emotional phone calls with doctors around how grateful they were for sending them some cutlery and sofa beds and all sorts, it really made me kind of think, actually, we need to move away from, I guess, this quite vacuous world of influencer marketing and move to something with way more purpose. And we can read so many articles at the moment about consumer behaviours change, and people care way more about a brand's purpose alongside product. It's not just the product anymore. So it's been a really interesting time to kind of look at what we're doing and say, we need to show as a brand, what we stand for, and that meaning behind the product.
Yeah, like I feel like we kind of had a really similar kind of experience with budgets at first. I think everyone just panicked and they're like, okay, right, everything's just pulling back a lot. But really kind of everything that's happened this year, like COVID, people realizing that Black Lives Matter, and all of these huge social, and the election, all these huge social issues going on. And social media has really been at the center of that, especially when the news isn't reporting things correctly, for example. So I think with people being more engaged than ever, it's just kind of, brands have kind of had to take a little step up and be like, right, okay, we're going to do this again. It might seem scary. And, we've slowly had people coming back and just had some really great campaigns where, like, I think people are just letting working with the right influencers and letting them kind of interpret what is going on, and also what the brand's message is, and kind of working together on that. I think we've touched on that quite a lot, but I think, yeah, those have been the challenges. But I think it's just about listening to everyone, really.
Lauren, I'm really glad to hear that was your approach, because I think as a creator, maybe I'm working with different brands, I had kind of the opposite, which was that everybody cancelled their budgets. It was completely understandable. But then getting anybody to, and this was from a professional and a personal perspective, getting anybody to align budget was something that didn't have a direct measurable ROI was pretty much impossible. So if you're doing anything for the LGBTQ community, and also I think a lot of other, Black Lives Matter and a lot of other kind of social good projects, if that's what you want to call them, is really, really hard, because you're not aligning a product with it. So anyone who comes to us as a company, as her, or to me, it's like they want to push a specific product and they want to give you a referral code and all of those kind of things. I'm like, you're not going to get the best response on it. You're going to get a better response if you do brand alignment and exposure. But actually, so many brands were like, we're only going to do marketing, we're only going to partner with people if we're getting direct sales out of it, which was really, really hard. And I agree with you guys. I think it's starting to come back now. People are starting to be like, okay, we need to actually do some alignment and some exposure stuff. But for me, it was very much like everything went, unless we can justify every single dollar or every single pound that we're spending, we're not going to do it. So I think you've got some brands that are not thinking as far ahead, just doing I always think about the teeth whitening brands, and it's just like the same copy and the same people, and you just see them. Whenever I think about bad influencers, that's what I think about. But yeah, I think the move towards purpose is slowly coming back, and I do think that's like maybe one positive of COVID and everything's had to happen over the course of this year is it's forced people to think that through, and also see that just doing product focused influencer marketing is not going to work.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about, and Frankie and Max, I think you've discussed it a little bit about making sure that you're being diverse and inclusive in the types of creators that you're working with, and making sure brands feel really aligned with that. Obviously, with everything going on, it's been more important than ever to increase representation and have a really strong commitment around that. I know at the Ad Council, our talent commitments are to make sure that we have 50% BIPOC on every single talent list, with at least 25 talent on that list are Black creators or influencers. So I'm curious how you've been able to approach that within your roles. Are there certain commitments or goals that you're working towards, or how are you having conversations with brands around increasing representation, whether that is in the LGBTQ plus community or Black or BIPOC creators and influencers? You had approached any of that with your clients?
So the way I kind of approach it is that, obviously being a woman of color, I'm kind of I'm obviously not an influencer, but I'm kind of in that already. So it's about when I'm literally having an initial call with the client and just being like, right, okay, have you guys thought about diversity? Like, I want to put together like a really successful campaign, obviously, for you, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be had from the offset. It can't just be like, all right, let's just put forward at least 5 LGBTQ plus or women of color, or men of color, or whoever. It just needs to be kind of really integral to the whole process. Also, I think in terms of kind of finding influencers and creators, it's just kind of, those people are like my friends, those people are people I know, those people are people I look up to, or, just industry people. I think there's a lot of kind of support systems and kind of networks for women of color, men of color, that kind of thing. So I think I've kind of got an advantage there with being able to get that across to my clients. But yeah, I think that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, there's definitely you get to play the card of whatever you are. So I always use I'm going to play the trans card here. And people are kind of scared of trans people, so nobody will correct me, which I quite enjoy. I'll be like, as a trans person, and then I just start telling them things. I think what I start with personally, and what we start with at Her when we talk to a lot of brands, because I think a lot of people who are outside of a community don't understand it, we start with the educational side. So we actually go back to the why is it important that you do this, not you have to do this, tick the box. Because when people start to understand the actual reason behind it, as opposed to the marketing ROI reason behind it, then they find it a lot easier to implement it into the whole part of a campaign, rather than just choosing models who look a certain way. I also think something we recommend a lot is to ask people to actually look within their own companies. So when we do LGBTQ focused campaigns, we ask people to their employee resource groups or their D&I chapters. Sometimes I get the response that they don't have one, which is concerning, and we recommend that they start one. But I think, yeah, if you take a few steps back and you actually start thinking about why you're doing this in the first place, and then applying it to a campaign rather than going in and saying this is what you need to do. I think with a lot of those, any kind of social issue, people are really scared to ask questions, and if you create a safe environment, so something that we do is I'm a queer person, ask me anything. If you create that environment, they can ask, and then they're not scared of it, and then they know how to implement it, rather than just kind of bullheadedly going in and saying, you have to do this, and if you don't do it, it's going to be wrong. You have to kind of start a few steps back, in my experience.
Cool. So we only have a few minutes left, and I'm curious, with the impact of everything that happened this year, what are sort of some trends that you see emerging in the industry for 2021? And what are you hoping that creators or brands will sort of implement in the new year?
One of the trends that I think we might move away from is this notion of lots of brands very focused on gifting product, and one of the I think why we might step away from that is we saw lots of conversation. I feel like it was off the back of a lot of conversation on social around the Black Lives Matter movement, talking about different socioeconomic groups, and gifting only favours a certain type of person who doesn't have to worry about paying their bills or their mortgage, and actually can take a product in return. So I feel like the kind of more mature brands will start to move away from that being what I feel like is quite a dated approach to influencer marketing. I think we're going to see much more kind of customer focus and loads more use of UGC, and veering away from, I guess, what we've seen out of the last year, like raw content performs just as well as this really super polished stuff, and actually sometimes it's way more interesting to see. So I think we'll start to see much more of that, and it kind of be embraced rather than we've just had to kind of go with that because lockdown has meant. So
I really agree with you, Lauren, there. Like, especially with the transparency of what influencers are being paid now. I think there was that kind of, I can't remember what the Instagram was called, but basically lots of influencers calling out brands for not really offering to pay them what they should be paid based on their engagement, and just wanting them to kind of work for free or just on a gifting basis. And it's kind of seeing a lot of brands getting called out, just hopping on the bandwagon, wanting to work with people just to make themselves look good. And it doesn't look good when you're getting called out for not paying them. So I think that transparency is going to be a huge trend for the next year or so. But yeah, I agree. User-generated content is like, it's getting really strong. Like, just having a really good engagement from a brand with customers. We see that going well.
I totally agree with you guys. I love that Lauren pointed out the specific type of person rule, because it, particularly if you're going deeper into like the diverse or people that you don't usually see in campaigns, they're not the kind of people that can afford to work for free. So it's really, really important. I think another thing that kind of goes with that, and what we tend to find when we're paying creators, is they're willing to do things for a lot longer. So what we're seeing a trend towards is actually like longer term campaigns where we're creating content with the same person over like editing like a 4-week flight to a 6-month flight. In particular, if you're doing like any kind of beauty stuff, or actually specifically reminds me of what I'm doing with the London Trans Clinic. So I'm literally doing my whole transition and hormones with them, which is going to be kind of crazy. But yeah, that longer term side of it, and actually having people as like brand ambassadors as opposed to just like a smash and grab influencer, which I think has so much more power to it as well.
And it provides results as well. When I was at Benefit, we had in the UK, we had 5 kind of people that we had long-term 12-month contracts with. And those 5 people generated something like 75% of our coverage, because they were so engaged. It has so much impact. And I think people are scared of doing less and not having faith in that result of actually it will give you far more return. And I think it's like, we all know that, you see, to Max's point earlier, you see an influencer talking about a tooth whitening product one week, and the next week it's another toothpaste or something. And I think as consumers, I think we'd see so much more value in a long-term relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I think if they're already kind of talking about the brand as well, you kind of onto a win-win, like if they're already identifying with it. So yeah, I agree with you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Frankie, Max, and Lauren, for being a part of this and answering all of our questions. And then if you have any questions out there, feel free to ask us, and we'll stick around for that.